Police would conduct a welfare check on a man named David Riess after friends and family grew concerned over his 2-week absence. On March 23rd of 2018, as police were searching the Riess residence, they would discover the decaying body of David Riess. After coming across the scene, officers would try to get in contact with David's wife of 26 years, Lois Riess, but officers were unable to get a hold of Lois. Officers realized that the couple's Cadillac Escalade was missing. At this point, officers had no idea what was going on. Was Lois a victim of foul play? Maybe Lois was kidnapped and the car was taken in the process. All officers knew is that they had a deceased husband and a missing wife. David Riess was born in 1963 in Rochester, Minnesota, and he would be stationed in San Diego after enlisting in the Navy before the spring of his final year in high school. He was 19 years old when he met Lois. Lois was 20 years old when she met David, and she would be born in Rochester, Minnesota as well, but in 1962. She would actually not finish high school. She would leave right after the 11th grade. The couple would date, and eventually they would get married. They would have 3 kids in 4 years. They would have 2 boys and a girl, and the Riess family would eventually move back to Rochester after David finished serving. David would open up a bait shop where he sold fishing equipment along with live bait, and Lois would run a daycare out of the couple's house. Even though David had the bait shop, he had a dream of opening a wax worm farm, so the couple decided to pack up and move to Prairie Blooming, Minnesota, where they would pursue David's dream. The couple was very social and very a part of the community. They went to a restaurant very often called the Servicemen's Club, and David, he would like to go out and he would shoot pool at this place called the Pizza Cellar or in the back room of this place called J&R Liquors with a half a dozen of his friends. J&R Liquors is actually the last place that David's friends saw him on May 8th of 2018. They said that they hung out, drank, and talked about football. An autopsy done on David would state that he died from several gunshot wounds. Investigators would talk to friends, family, employees, co-workers, anybody they could in order to understand what happened to David and who shot David. Employees of the Prairie Wax Worm Farm would state that on March 12th of 2018, Lois would visit, but she was not acting like herself. Lois was normally very friendly and greeted the employees and asked about their life, but this time she just kept her head down. Lois would tell the employees that David's not feeling well, I've got to take care of him. 3 days later, Lois would return to the office and state that David was not feeling well, but that she was going to take him to the hospital the very next day. The employees said that they did find it weird that David was not communicating to them nor around, but he did have a history of a stomach issue, so in case he was actually sick, they didn't want to bother him. According to employees that day, she would sit in the office looking out the window towards the family home. Lois had come in a week later to state that David had been cleared by the doctors to go on a fishing competition, and the employees state that they had no reason to not believe her. That was until they saw Lois leave in the Escalade that the couple shared 2 days after David should have already left for the competition. After taking the couple's car, Lois would drive 45 minutes to Diamond Joe. Diamond Joe was a casino that she visited very frequently. Now, there was a few times that David did go with her to this casino, but David did not enjoy gambling, but Lois did, and her gambling problem became a really big issue prior to David's killing. In order to feed her gambling addiction, Lois would withhold checks from employees, and she even did a donation for David to get a golf cart so that way it would be easy for him to travel from the property to the workplace, to the office. But that golf cart never materialized after all the donations were given. And another thing is, a family member has even accused her of withholding the money that was given to her in order to bury her father, stating that his ashes were just sitting in her house for months. Brendan, Lois's son, states that his mother gambled away the $500,000 that her father left her. Lois's addiction knew no bounds, as the investigators discovered that she would even steal from her older sister, Kim. Kim would have a mental breakdown in 2010 after the failure of her marriage, and Lois would let her live with her. Lois would eventually place Kim in adult foster care in 2012. She stated that Kim was unable to perform tasks for daily living or make decisions regarding her mental needs. Lois would tell the courts that her sister suffered from clinical depression, that she was bipolar, and that she had the cognitive capability of a 10-year-old. Lois would use this to apply to be Kim's legal guardian and conservator. In the annual filing proceedings that she would have to do for Kim, she would state that Kim was deteriorating mentally, emotionally, and physically due to schizophrenia and Parkinson's disease. Lois would also state that Kim would go on expensive shopping sprees due to her compulsive disorder. This action would give Lois full access to Kim's finances, which included the $200,000 inheritance that her father had given her. Lois was spending thousands of Kim's money. She was literally withdrawing from the ATM at the casino. This would go on until 2015 when the court did an audit and noticed something was up. When the court audited and looked at what was going on, they calculated that Lois owed her already deceased father $14,000. Then she had spent $15,000 in gifts for her children and another $6,500 on other expenses. In light of all the fraud, Kim was given a social worker. Her social worker fought for her rights and asked that Lois be removed as legal guardian of her. Lois, of course, had an explanation for everything the court found. The court was not buying it, and they would suspend her guardianship and conservatorship, and a few months later, eventually terminate full guardianship and the conservatorship over her sister. Because of the fact that Lois was ordered by the judge to pay $100,000 back to her sister Kim, the DA decided not to press any criminal charges against her. Shortly after Lois was exposed for stealing from her sister, David would come home from eating with a coworker to discover Lois unconscious in a chair. David would call 911 and first responders would perform life-saving measures on her before she was airlifted to the hospital. It would be determined that Lois had ingested an excessive amount of pain pills, and after spending 2 weeks at the hospital, she would be released. Investigators would discover that Lois cashed 2 missing checks from the waxworm farm into David's personal account a week prior to the discovery of David's body. One of the checks was worth $8.6K and another one was worth $1.2K. Lois would also take out 3 separate checks from David's account, and the last one being on March 23rd. And with this evidence, an arrest warrant was put out for Lois. Investigators say that they suspected Lois from the very beginning. It wasn't so much of who it was the motive behind it. They said that they couldn't find any evidence of domestic violence or any sort of affair that was going on, so investigators came to the conclusion that Lois simply killed David in order to feed her gambling addiction. Investigators state that David knew about his wife's addiction, but when Lois gambled away the couple's new car fund, that was the last straw for David. They believe that David cut Lois off after telling her that if she wanted money, she would have to come work for him at the business. He was done just giving money to her. On Tuesday, April 3rd of 2018, Pam Hutchinson had arrived at Fort Myers Beach to be with her long-term friend, Donna Fetro. Donna was there because her late husband had unalived himself, and she was there to spread his ashes. Donna would stay with her family while Pam checked into condo 404 alone at Marina Villa. Pam was 59 years old and described as outgoing and easy to make friends. She enjoyed fishing for marlin and she enjoyed going out late and vacationing in Mexico. On the evening that she arrived, Pam would go out to dinner with Donna and the two would watch the sunset. The very next day, she would go to Myrtle Beach with their friends and have lunch, but she would decline an invite from Donna to have dinner that night. She said that she was going to go and hang out with the woman that she had just met. Donna says that the reasoning for this is that the woman sparked Pam's sympathy with her recently widowed story. On April 9th of 2018, there was a possible leakage at the Marina Village, and the manager at the time, Lois Riess, went around to check to see where it could be at. She noticed a foul smell coming from room 404, and she thought it could be a possible sewage leakage. She wasn't too sure about it, so she asked some guests nearby to go with her just to check it out. While searching the room, they would discover a deceased woman on the bathroom floor. There was a pillow with a bullet located on top of her legs, and upon this discovery, Lori called the police. Police would identify the deceased woman as Pam Hutchinson. Police would discover at the scene that a .22 caliber bullet was lodged in Pam's right bra cup. An autopsy would be done, and it would conclude that the bullet that killed her traveled through her lower left lung, through her right aortum and aortum, her esophagus, and then her upper right lung. Pam would collapse while her stomach and intestines filled with blood. Then the killer would stuff towels underneath the bathroom door and in an attempt to slow the decomp would turn the furnace down to 61 degrees. Police would interview Pam's friends and the people at the village. Police would notice some strange activity. Due to the fact that Pam's body had been smelling, that means that decomp had been happening. So that means that police know that Pam's body had been there for some time. But as they were looking at her history and her credit card history, they would notice that there was some recent activity. There was a video of a woman who looked like Pam, same age, similar hair color, comparable complexion and build, at Smokin' Oyster, Wells Fargo, and Ocala Lipton, but investigators know that this woman was not Pam. As investigators would continue to watch surveillance video of this unknown woman, they would discover that there was a footage of Pam and this unknown woman sitting at the bar. Then, after dinner, Pam and this woman approached Pam's condo on the day of Pam's murder. The woman would approach Pam's condo at 7:46 p.m., and at 8:34 p.m., this unknown woman would be seen walking towards the fourth floor elevator. The woman seemed to be distraught and upset and potentially crying as she stood on the landing for 13 minutes before returning to Pam's condo. Donna would tell investigators that she messaged Pam that night on the beach where she was spreading the ashes of her late husband, but Pam never responded. Donna admits that she didn't think much about it at the time. Judy Keene, who was Pam's realtor, tried to get in contact with her that night as well. She needed Pam to fill out the application for the condo, but Judy did not hear anything from Pam after 7 p.m. that night. When Pam ended up not responding to her over the weekend, Judy states that she believed that Pam must have gotten buyer's remorse. Lois Riess would tell officials that on April 6 of 2018 that she received a phone call from Condo 404 asking if there was any way they could stay for the weekend. Lori would agree and then charge Pam's card for an additional 3 days. Investigators continued to follow the surveillance footage to discover that the morning after the murder that the unknown woman that was with Pam was seen on the camera in the village parking lot. She was seen taking Pam's Acura and pulling up next to a Cadillac Escalade, then would proceed to take luggage and other items out of the Escalade and put them into the Acura. The next time the woman is seen on camera is at a Wells Fargo's in Fort Myers, where she withdraws $5,000 from Pam's account. The teller explains that the woman was making small talk with her, explaining that she was at a hotel nearby and that she had just gotten a home in Bradenton, Florida. The woman then proceeds to get into Pam's Acura and head north. The Acura goes past Bradenton, Florida, and actually ends up in Ocala, Florida. There, the woman would purchase a room at the Hilton using Pam's credit card. The woman would also sign Pam's name on 2 deliveries that they received that night. The woman would check out of the Hilton and then drive to an ATM where she withdrew $500 3 separate times from Pam's account. The footage shows the woman make her way to a casino where she would actually win a $1.5 thousand jackpot off of a $5 play. The woman would then use her ID and social security number to claim said jackpot. Officials would finally be able to identify this unknown woman, and it was Lois Riess. A bolo, which is a be on the lookout, was sent out nationwide for Lois. The search for Lois became a big deal. They set up a national hotline and posted billboards with her wanted poster on them. Officials placed a $5,000 reward for Lois, and Crime Stoppers in Florida offered an additional $1,000 reward. Officials received many tips about Lois's whereabouts, but her trail actually started to go cold. They only found footage of the Acura on a remote camera on the Texas Highway 77, so officials started to think that maybe she was going towards the border, but when they looked it up, they realized that she actually didn't have an active passport. Police put in hours and hours trying to figure out where Lois was at. Though there was a nationwide bolo out for Lois, the community of South Padre did not seem to get the information. But Lois had found the perfect place to hide, taking residence in a Motel 6 and even changing her name to Donna. For the time that Lois had spent in South Padre posing as Donna, she had made a decent amount of friends. Lois would eventually get spotted by an employee at a restaurant called Dirty Al's. When this employee noticed Lois, they realized her from the news and they called 911. When the police arrived, Lois had actually left, but she was next door at this place called the Sea Ranch. When they entered the Sea Ranch, Lois was at the bar. They surrounded her, and she gave up without any resistance. When Lois was arrested, officials gained a search warrant for the Motel 6 and Pam's Acura. Inside the Acura, they would find pill bottles, a map, they would find a brochure to a casino, and then some clothing items that Lois could be seen wearing when she was pretending to be Pam. Officials would also find items that belonged to Marina Village, such as tissues, soap, and a towel. A few condoms, 4 credit cards, $548 worth of cash, and Pam's checkbooks were also found. A holster, duct tape, and bullets were found in a black bag, along with 2 handguns. Police also found Pam's sunglasses wrapped in a towel, which they say might indicate that it was some form of trophy. When Lois arrived in court, she admitted to shooting Pam, and in order to avoid the death penalty, she pled guilty to first-degree murder. She also pled guilty to using a deceased person's information along with stealing a motor vehicle. Lois did not explain why she killed Pam, she just simply answered the court's questions. The judge would sentence Lois to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was ordered to pay $38,000 in court fees and other expenses. Lois was then put on trial for the murder of David. Lois's lawyer would work out a deal, and Lois would plead guilty to the first-degree murder of David. The judge would sentence Lois to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and she would be able to spend that time in Minnesota to be closer to her family instead of Florida. Lois's lawyer would ask Lois questions about the events of that day, and Lois would tell the courtroom what happened the day she killed David. Lois explained that on March 11th, after attending their son's baseball game, David wanted to leave, but she wanted to stay. They ultimately would end up leaving, but would fight the entire drive home. Their argument continued into the bedroom until David got a loaded gun from the dresser and handed it to her and stated, "Why don't you unalive yourself? Maybe you'll get it right this time." Instead of using it on herself, Lois states that she took the gun, aimed at David's chest, and fired twice. Bill, Lois's oldest child, would state in court that "you took something from me that I can never get back. I will never forgive you. The hurt you caused my children, your grandchildren, God, they loved you so much." Bria, Lois's daughter, would state in court that "losing my father at the hands of my mother is something I'll never be able to process. I wish I could go back and get my mother the help she needed so that way she could have never killed my dad. Those are the thoughts that haunt me constantly." Lois would cry as her children read their statements, and she would address the courtroom, and she would state, "What I did was an unpardonable crime. Solitude is forever. I feel like I deserve this. I don't deserve reprieve. My life without David is my sentence. Our children are loving, kind, and strong people. It's because of David's strengths that they are this way. My greatest accomplishment are our children." Lois would then address David's friends and family and apologize for taking him from them. She would then address her kids and state, "I feel like I must say this. I didn't know how much pain I was in until I wasn't." Then she would mouth "I love you" to her children before she left the courtroom. It wouldn't be till many years later that Lois would give her reasoning for why she shot David in a jailhouse interview. "It was just a perfect storm. It was just years of abuse and years of giving and neglecting my own mental health and own needs. I don't know, I think the word is psychotic break. I just snapped. I was very intimidated by him. I didn't think I had a way out or could defy him because he was a big man and he was very aggressive. Lots of verbal abuse, which I think is worse than physical abuse." Lois has never given an explanation for why she killed Pam, and this is what she said in her jailhouse interview. "Never. I never anticipated hurting that woman. She reached out to me to be my friend. I just wish I could have been in a better state of mind. I could have been her friend." It truly is a puzzle because I don't have all the memories and answers for that. It was shown to me that I took her life. I still do not know the reason for why it happened. She just got caught up in my breakdown, and it was awful. I feel absolute remorse and shame. I feel terrible that I took her life and David's life. It would be in the jailhouse interview where Lois would explain why she decided not to go to trial. She stated that her mother died in a mental hospital, and that's not the way she wants to die. That's her biggest fear. She stated that she felt like if she had gone to trial, she was mentally incompetent. She was literally in the middle of a mental breakdown, and that if she would have gone to trial, that's exactly what would have happened. She would have ended up like her mother. Lois Riess is currently serving her sentence at the Minnesota Correctional Facility. And if you liked today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, be safe, Earthlings. Peace out.